I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Hello, and welcome to the Even Worse podcast, where the films are bad and the podcast is even worse. I'm your host, Matthew Rogers. Joining me today,
Got Drew Myers in the house.
Cade McCarley.
Joshua Summers.
All right, so this week on the Even Worse podcast, we watched The Wicker Man, 2006 version starring Nicolas Cage. Now, Josh, you know a little bit about the original. Can you tell us a little bit about the original, sort of when it came out, maybe what was it about?
Sure. So the one of the similarities we'll see is these movies are almost identical, except for the main theme from the 1973 is what Cade and I were talking about before recording, that it's actually the pagan versus Catholicism. The main theme of this 2006 version is the separation between men and women, and the Christopher Lee version is based around the religious underlying tone.
It did, and so did that like change the plot of the new one, or like the story, the dialogue, what?
No, not really. We just pulled up that about 80% of the dialogue from the 2006 version is ripped straight off of the 73 version.
Word for word? 80%?
Yeah, text in text, word for word.
I can tell why it's bad now.
Which the 1973 version is arguably a pretty decent movie, which I guess just shows that maybe with the modern times and the direction and especially the acting, which we'll talk about, it just did not translate well to the modern screen.
All right, so we've already seen the film, so Drew, initial thoughts?
It was really dull for me. There was a lot of just talking and not a lot of action going on. So yeah, that's what I got from that. I mean, there was quick action, like the quick punches and stuff like that, and of course the bees, which we'll get to. But for the most of the film, I felt like was just a lot of talking.
Yeah, a lot of not anything going on.
Exactly. Just could have been told in a 30-minute short film.
Oh, of course.
Would be a good Twilight Zone episode, almost in that area that it is expanded to a great length. But I'd say that the payoff is worth it depending on what you're going and looking for. Like from our perspective, that the appreciation of the bad films, that the payoff is definitely worth it. But for a regular audience member who paid $8 to see this movie, they would be extremely pissed off of the result.
Oh, of course. Now, the film, if you don't really know what it's about, it's basically Nicolas Cage plays a police officer, and he gets a letter to go to this island that's ruled by these pagan, I guess is what you call them, these pagan ladies.
Honestly, they're more just
they're separated
Amish
from
and
society.
just separated from society.
They
Amish
do
is
refer
the
to
easiest
them as
word, too.
Amish.
Yeah, so he goes there, things happen, shit starts to go down. He's trying to find this girl named Rowan, which we learn turns out to be his daughter.
Because she's disappeared.
Yes, she's disappeared. So the whole movie's about him trying to find this girl Rowan, and he's got to deal with these ladies on this island who are complete batshit crazy. And
it's pretty apparent from the beginning of the film
crazy.
that they are crazy.
Yes,
absolutely.
oh, of course. And we get one of, if not the best over-the-top Nicolas Cage performances of all time. And that is really what this movie is about. I mean, this is a tour de force of Nicolas Cage acting.
It's not only Nicolas Cage is so bad, it's just the writing. It's just terrible plot. I mean, let's start with the truck.
The truck.
The inciting incident.
First scene in the movie.
Yeah, right at the beginning of the movie, Nicolas Cage pulls over this car because they dropped a doll out, so he picks the doll up and then pulls him over and says, hey, I got your doll. And
almost like Final Destination, just
exactly.
Blue, this truck just comes and just runs them over, honks their horn. It's just there's things you see in classic movies, classic horror films. It's just
right.
And it's very campy.
So out of the blue.
And so this scene, it's trying to set up that I guess Nicolas Cage has some sort of, or Nicolas Cage's character has some sort of PTSD from this, and he's given up his police his badge for a little while.
We have about 50 flashbacks to remind us.
Yeah, of course.
But of course, none of the PTSD even ties into.
Yeah,
the rest of the film,
and he picks up that everything's okay, that self-help video that never comes into play. And
because he lost his tapes. They took his tapes.
Yes, they took his tapes.
Nixon.
Right, so the inciting incident leads us to Nick receiving a letter from his ex-fiance who ran out on him
Yes.
a couple years ago, saying that she has a daughter and that the daughter has been missing, and of course he has to go to the island. And I don't know, like there's something about this film. It's just it's a really intriguing plot, but it just feels
And that's
so
probably-
long.
Execution.
It's terrible execution.
And that's probably why it works. That's probably because the plot line is pretty cool,
Yeah.
The whole premise of the movie is pretty cool, and that's
Yeah.
probably why it works so well in the
Exactly,
original,
yeah.
but it just doesn't translate to this remake whatsoever.
Well, I think a lot of the acting was like Kristen Stewart-esque acting.
Yes,
And then
especially
it was very
especially
dull.
Willow, I believe her
Nicolas
name
Cage
was.
and then is that the girl?
Yes, Willow.
Yeah, those scenes, they would last like 10 minutes long, and you're just like, and the shots are so boring. It's like,
Oh,
Oh yeah.
it's just shot, and so it's just like your eyes, like at the end of that scene, you're like, wow, geez, how long did that take?
I mean, we sort of made the joke when we were watching it, but I don't think Nicolas Cage talked above like a whisper for the first 20 minutes of the
Right.
film,
Yeah.
really until
he really gradually
But it goes
increases.
to show the
yeah,
contrast because at
Yeah.
the end, every line is him screaming.
Yeah,
Betcha.
yeah.
exactly.
So let's talk about a little bit about Nicolas Cage here, who famous actor. I know we all grew up watching his
Yeah,
movies. I
sure.
don't know
National
how
Treasure.
good they were. National Treasure. He's going to steal the Declaration of
How many jokes do we
Independence.
make during the
Way too
film?
many. Nicolas Cage is almost a joke now. I mean, he really is a
The
joke.
sad thing is,
I
he
love
used to
him.
be a great actor. He really did.
Exactly.
Right,
I
sure.
love him. Nicolas Cage to me he's an American treasure, honestly. he truly doesn't care, and he picks these roles and then he regrets them, and you never know what's going on inside this guy's mind.
I mean, he
but
won an Oscar.
But he
yeah,
he
exactly.
owns the
He's won
movies
an
too,
Oscar.
though. He regrets them, but he also kind of embraces the campiness, the cringiness.
Exactly.
He doesn't shy away from it exactly because
Right.
he keeps taking these damn roles. But
He
it's so
actually has a quote that I'm reading here. He says, Cage himself acknowledged that the film was absurd, and he remarked in 2010, there is a mischievous mind at work on the Wicker Man, you know what I mean? And I finally kind of said, I might have known that the movie was meant to be absurd. But saying that now after the fact is okay, but to say it before the fact is not, because you have to let the movie have its own life. So he obviously acknowledges that it's bad. And
I just think Nicolas Cage was a bad choice for this film. With the script given all the sarcastic and stupid jokes, which I hate in the first place, Nicolas Cage, I just don't see him, working the sarcasm and the joke. He's not like a very comedic actor, you know what I mean?
Right. He's
And not that this character is, but I don't know.
Yeah.
and
There's a balance.
it's definitely an unintentional comedy at times.
Well, I think one of the points you need to mention, like for audiences in 2006, we've experienced this side of Cage multiple times now.
Right.
But during that time, it's interesting to see like how an audience would have reacted because he had just when did he win his Academy Award?
1995. He was nominated again in 2004.
What did he
5.
What did he win for?
So he
I
received
don't remember.
the Academy Award for Leaving Las Vegas.
That's what
right.
it was.
Great movie.
And then was nominated again for
Adaptation.
Adaptation.
Yes. Both great
Adaptation,
movies.
right?
Adaptation.
You're
sorry,
right.
sorry.
Great
So
movie.
like 2002, he gets nominated for Best Actor, right?
Should have gotten
Yeah.
two.
And then so 4 years later, he's in this. So my point that I'm trying to draw out is that I don't know how audiences would have perceived. Maybe this is what's led. Maybe the first incident that's led to the downfall, the quote unquote downfall of Nick Cage, but it's definitely an interesting role to see him play.
Right. And you can't not talk about Nicolas Cage and the way he acts in this film. It is completely over the top. But that is what his over the top acting is really what makes this movie
and he just
watchable,
he
you
just
know?
has those like sudden like just
Oh yeah.
overreactions.
Oh,
It's just like,
exactly.
"Tell me!"
And we can talk about one of my favorite scenes in the film is the schoolhouse scene.
Yes.
When he goes into the school, of all these little girls, and he starts confronting them, and he just
You little liar.
Yeah, he's beyond amazed at what's going on here. He's like, he opens up a desk and there's a bird in there, and the girls are like, well, we wanted to see how long it'd live in there. And he's like, he asked the teacher, well, why the hell would you let them do something like that? He is very much in this movie. He's very much the audience, like, why is this going on? This is fucking ridiculous.
He seems to just be like his character's written in there just to advance the story by asking questions. Like,
Right.
there would be no story in this film if Nicolas Cage wasn't asking questions. You can even say right from the beginning, if he opened that letter and was like, this girl left me, however, 10 years
Exactly.
ago.
Yeah.
It's like, she left me behind. I don't care. Rips up the letter. There would have been no story.
Right.
But there is something about Nicolas Cage constantly being curious and constantly, at least, I guess he's more trying to help than trying to be curious. But just the fact that he is so dedicated to this girl that he doesn't even know.
Exactly.
And I think as it's like a writer and director, the big issue is that this girl that we're supposed to feel sorry for, she is such a bitch. She's so annoying, and
Are you talking about Willow?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't even. I wanted her to die.
Yeah.
Yes. She never seems to speak in complete sentences either.
No, hardly. I guess that's one of the things they were going for with this. Nicolas Cage always has to speak in full sentences, even though for the first seems like hour he doesn't. They're trying to show that contrast.
Right.
He
That
speaks more in questions.
right.
than
He's always
sentences.
asking questions, but that goes back to the audience thing that the whole time we're watching, or the whole time people that haven't seen it before that are watching, most of the time you're just asking questions because it's just utter confusion.
Right.
It's madness, pretty much.
Right. And honestly, Nicolas Cage is the only one in this film actually. He's the only one I would sit down and watch. All these other characters are complete. They're so one-dimensional. They're so one-dimensional, and you don't give a shit about them. You're watching this for Nicolas Cage. This movie is completely his movie.
Something I'm thinking about right now is there's so little character development. I don't see arcs in any of these characters.
Not a
I
single
mean,
one.
Of course not.
the only arc that I can find is like Willow and Nicolas Cage, who I don't know what is his character's name?
Edward Malice.
Malice?
Let
I'm
me
just gonna keep calling him Cage. Willow
yes,
and Nicolas
Edward Malice.
Cage, they sort of have like this falling back in love, and you're like, oh, that's sweet. They're like bonding over
Right.
their
Then you'll never see it
lost daughter. But again, you never see it again because of what happens at the end. Which
Exactly.
I guess
is
you
what
could argue that
we'll
Nick
get to.
Cage had a little bit of an arc if you consider just the spiral to madness, that very calm and collected, and then by the end just screaming "you bitches" out loud.
Well,
it's
I
it's absurd.
think in his, honestly, in that position, the way he reacted to it is exactly how I pictured it. These crazy women who cut the tongues out of all the guys that live there. They're completely. It's a completely matriarch society, and they are just. Nicolas Cage. I lost my train of thought because
It's all good.
I
It's
just
all
kept
good.
thinking of Nicolas Cage, the way his character develops in this film. Well, besides it doesn't develop. So he is just, it's the absurdity around him, and it's the absurdity of the film that makes his character,
Sure.
I just think that you're talking about sort of his absurdity of his character. And I think a lot of that absurdity is his inability to find levels in his acting. I think
Right.
he's either like, hey, I'm Nicolas Cage, or he's like, ah!
Yeah, exactly.
Over the top.
There's no in between.
Sure.
Right.
What's up, Drew?
Enough about Nicolas Cage. Let's get to Sister Beach.
Sister,
Sister
oh
Beach.
my
She
gosh.
might have the lowest female voice I've ever heard.
Yeah,
I
Sister
was-
Beach.
I straight up thought like she was a
Discount
man
Kathy
for a
Bates.
second.
Yeah, exactly.
Discount Kathy Bates. Okay, I was confused
I
on
guess
which one she was.
We could
but
lead
yes.
that in to talk about just all the women in general.
I agree.
But yeah, it's so, the names for one obviously are. He even brings up the absurdity of them all. They're all part of a cult.
like-
they
he's
all
like,
made
right,
themselves
no,
off of flowers.
they're-
In a lot of the
Yeah.
ways, Nicolas Cage is kind of like representing the audience, and then he's
Sure.
asking questions.
Yeah.
that
Right.
we're asking.
Yeah, it's exactly, and that's why I bring up the schoolhouse scene. He's literally asking like, "Why the fuck is there a bird in the desk?" That is
Exactly.
absolutely absurd.
There's a lot in this film that is not explained at the end, and that is
Oh,
like
yeah.
one of those. It's like, why are we teaching children to like keep birds in their desk,
Right.
or like even smaller things like Sister Rose's sister? But I think so. Let's talk about just like the island itself and like the women who live there and the beekeepers and
Yeah, so their honey, their big thing is, I guess they export honey.
I guess.
And they had a bad harvest or
Right.
something, so they believe that this sacrifice, on Fertility Day, what they call it, it will help them. It will help them have a better harvest.
Like Aztecs or whatever.
Exactly. Yes, like a very pagan ritual, and they worship a goddess who apparently the sister Summersisle, who I guess is the main antagonist of this film.
She's
even
the
though
leader.
She's in the film maybe 7 to 10 minutes. in
She's
the entire
mentioned
film.
a lot though.
Yes,
which
she
is
is
cool
mentioned.
because she's like she's Jaws or whatever. She's
Right.
like
This is the blue and white face lady.
yes.
Yes,
let's,
that's the
let's
blue and
not
white
let's
lady.
not pull Jaws
Yeah,
into this
let's not
one.
compare
Okay?
it to
Please,
Jaws.
let's
Like,
keep Jaws
You
out of
don't
the
see Jaws
conversation.
for a really long time. You don't see Sister Summerisle, so you can sort of imagine what she looks like, imagine who she is, imagine
And
the
then
kind
you're
of person
just-
she is, and then you're disappointed
In one
because
case, you're
it's just
excited. The other,
Right.
you're disappointed.
it's I mean there's a really big difference between good movies and bad movies, and
What about those little twins? Let's move on to those little.
Oh,
The-
the girls from
the-
Series of Unfortunate Events.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
I was gonna say The
Wait.
Shining.
Oh,
Wait,
the
which-
twin
yes,
girls
yes.
that are in the
Are you
back
talking
of
about
a lot of shots.
Oh, yeah.
the twin.
There's two
I mean, there's
sets
so
of
many
twins.
twins
There's
in
two
the-
sets
Yes.
of twins.
One
But I'm
set are
talking
like
about-
blind, and then the other are like teenage girls.
They just kind of chill in the background of like scenes, and it's just like
Right.
It's like he's trying to be sneaky, but it's not
Yeah,
working.
obviously, if you're not seeing the movie now, that it's hard to picture. But there are a lot of scenes throughout, especially the Sister Summerisle.
Towards the end, too.
Towards the end, when they have no reason to be in the shot, and then just like in The Shining, like the "Come play with us, Danny,"
Yeah,
girls, they're always there for no reason.
They're in the shot because it's like we got to make it creepy.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it doesn't work because again, the absurdity.
Right.
It definitely doesn't work like how Kubrick pulled it off. But at the same time, I can see where they're going with it. It doesn't work just like most of the things in this film.
Kate, you mentioned
just
it.
like that kiss scene.
Oh, goodness.
Kate, you mentioned a little bit like talking about how it's supposed to be a horror film. And I
Right.
hate horror films, so I was really worried coming into this
Yeah,
film because
it's-
I was like I hate horror films, and I even hate bad horror films because I still get scared. This is not a horror film.
Yeah,
It is a horror
It
film.
is.
It's
I
as
mean-
much as like Final Destination is a horror
Yeah,
film. You're not
that's
actually scared. They're
Right.
just showing.
This isn't
Yeah,
anything like
definitely
Troll
not
2.
scared during.
but-
So I just think that it feels like a horror film made by somebody who has never seen horror
Right.
and is like, I know it'll be scary, and then it's just like campy jump scares that wouldn't even scare like a 4-year-old.
Right, so they went on, like Google and they searched in top 10 horror cliches and they're like, oh shit, I got my movie.
They're like,
it's
I
pretty
know
much like
exactly
that.
what I'm gonna
Right.
do. I noticed something very interesting with the film, and that was the performances by the women. I think there was actually like the performances by the sisters were really believable.
Sure.
And I thought they did a good job. I mean, we've already talked about how much we hate Willow, and that's fine because she's like trying to be like the good guy and then ends up being the bad guy. Spoiler alert.
which
Which we'll talk about. But I think the sisters really did have a solid performance, and I think
Yeah.
it was good. They brought the amount of creep factor that this had. It was
Sure.
all because of them.
and I believed that the twist. It was like believable, and I thought they did a good job of.
yeah.
Speaking
Step
of
behind
the
it.
sisters, I think one of the things that we make fun of the acting. We made fun of the acting the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, they did a good job performing, but the whole thing about the sisters is they're supposed to be very non-realistic. They're supposed to be
Okay.
very inhuman in their ways. They're
Mhm.
just disconnected from the actual world, which, to their credit, they did an excellent job in doing it. But the relatability factor, because the only character you can relate to is Nick Cage, and he's so
And-
unlike any other human.
And in a small sense, Willow, I believe.
Really?
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
she's written to be relatable.
I just think her dialogue is too. I don't even know how to describe it.
Yes, let's talk about the terrible
It's
dialogue in this
outlandish,
movie.
honestly.
All of the dialogue is awful.
Half of it is fragment sentences, and then the other half is questions.
Right.
And that's pretty much it. And then you get the 2 10-minute scenes where basically they explain the whole movie.
Yeah, it's just
That-
exposition
Within
after
exposition.
Yes.
It really does feel like someone's attempt. I mean, we talked about this, like to make a Shyamalan-esque film. Like,
Yeah,
when
right.
Shyamalan
You
was
definitely
doing
saw
good
elements
stuff.
for sure.
Yeah.
And it's
so can I bring up something real fast?
Go for it.
No.
This is our third film
Okay.
that we've done on the Even Worse podcast. And a theme that we've brought up in every single one of these films is exposition.
Yep.
So
Mm-hmm.
I believe exposition is a huge factor in making in how a movie is bad.
Oh, absolutely. Because I mean, we all met this year, and the first time we met, it wasn't like, "Hello, my name is Matthew Rogers."
Right.
Um,
I'm from here. My
it's
parents
not
have
real.
this name.
It's
etc.
not real. Like it's not. It's not
Mm-hmm.
how people would talk.
At all.
No.
And that's a challenge that good directors face is how to expose
Right.
things without
Right,
being
exactly.
obvious. And it's
Yes.
not easy.
Right.
And this is a great example of
Yeah,
how
it's
to
not
do it.
easy.
I think that just writing is so difficult in general and making realistic dialogue, and I think that's why we can sort of look back on kids movies and be like, oh, it's cheesy. It's got cheesy dialogue. And that's what kids need. Kids need very oversimplified dialogue. But when you get to a point when you are creating movies like The Wicker Man for an adult audience, you really need to have solid dialogue.
I mean, we're too smart for this. I mean, I don't want to.
I want to be
toot
interested
your own
when
horn,
I'm
but
figuring
we're
out
just
the
way too
story.
smart to.
You can't
Exactly.
spoon feed. You can't spoon feed your audience. You
no,
know.
for sure.
I think there is something about sort of how the story was told. Josh, you kept saying it's questions and sentence fragments, and it's like they're being like, oh, I'm gonna reveal just a tiny bit of information, and then
sure.
they would leave,
And the writers think they're being smart.
They're like, yes.
we just think they're ridiculous.
And we mentioned it during the film, and there's a part in this film where one of the sisters says she'll burn to death, and then the next sentence says she burned to death. So I guarantee you that was just the writer, nudging himself like, haha, I'm using syntax
genius
to be clever, which it's not clever.
Well, I think one of the funny things that I kind of wanted to get to is this movie doesn't really pull any punches when it comes to twists. Of course, there's the thing at the end, which obviously we'll reveal because it's kind of common knowledge that things don't end well for Nick Cage and things end pretty well for the Islanders.
Right.
But from the beginning that these people are absolutely out of their minds.
Yeah.
And it's not like I think I drew from an example like Shutter Island where
don't spoil that movie for me.
There's a big twist at the end, or there's things are going pretty well. We know from the beginning that these people, our first introduction to the Islanders, they have like a human in a bag, and they won't reveal what's in the bag.
Well, we don't know.
It's just crazy. It's crazy.
human.
But I guess that just goes to show that obviously we have a big twist at the end, apparently, in this film. But
I think that's sort of why I don't really enjoy like thrillers and horror films, because it's like, okay, all right, when's the twist coming? Because that's when a film gets interesting. Because a twist is there because it's not predictable.
And to back what Josh was saying is that this really is basically a discount Shutter Island, and
to be fair, it did come out before. Shutter
obviously,
Island,
yes, but Shutter Island did it much better than these guys attempted to do. In that there's an island, there's a twist, and
Now
there's an island, there's a
Neil
twist.
LaBute to Martin Scorsese. So.
Matt, you
What's
were
up?
talking about how horror films, you say they rely on twists, and see, I'm a avid horror fan.
Same.
I am aware.
Huge
Same.
horror fan. Might be my favorite. And when it's done
Same.
right, it might be my favorite film genre.
Absolutely.
It's the easiest to mess up.
There's films that they don't rely on twists at all. They don't spoon feed things to the audience. The themes are there. A great example of this is The Babadook. If anybody's seen that, they don't spoon feed you anything. You're able to figure it out yourself. What does this mean? And I think in The Wicker Man, there's definitely some themes that they were trying to get across, but all the exposition, the bad acting, the bad dialogue, it completely ruins any kind of theme that they were trying to go for here.
I think that's what a bad movie is. It's like, especially bad horror, it relies on too much on the genre. I think a lot of movies rely too much on the genre. And when you make a bad comedy film, you have a lot of fart jokes or people like falling. It's just like,
Or Adam Sandler in general.
that's
I
true.
can see in the 70s, in the early 70s, why this was a, maybe not a super successful film.
It was
but,
a cult film.
Yeah,
It was a cult
I
film.
can see why people
to
like
be
that.
fair, I'm gonna go back and watch the original
I think I'm going
You
to
should.
too.
because I think it would be really good. Sorry, what were you saying, Drew?
No, I was just agreeing with you, yeah.
Okay. And I think like I was sort of saying, like they rely a lot on tropes and sort of stereotypical approaches to these films, and that's when films are bad because good films push boundaries.
Yeah.
And stereotypical films don't push
This film
boundaries.
definitely keeps it safe. That's
Right.
for sure.
Yeah.
Now,
Especially a remake.
I would disagree with you on that. I think it keeps it safe until the end,
Yeah.
where Nicolas Cage just goes completely batshit crazy.
Speaking of
And-
the end,
Yeah, the
Let's
end,
talk about it.
It
Talk
just
about
gets
the end.
it just gets weird at the end. I mean, there's more mask, and you're just
Yeah,
like, what?
And it
I mean,
happens so
you know,
fast, too.
but it happens so fast, but it's also downright hilarious.
Do we want to explain
When
it from a narrative perspective?
the bear outfit.
yeah,
Like,
Josh.
in
Josh, do you
in
want to explain
in
the
order?
end?
So basically, the climax as well as the finale of this film, there's basically no.
There's very little.
There's no falling
action.
action whatsoever, and no conclusion resolution. There's none of that. Basically, Nick Cage is at the pinnacle point, and
He's gonna save
the
Rowan.
festival has begun, and he's finally He sees Rowan, and basically the big reveal is that Rowan has not been missing the whole time. That it was simply a ploy to get Nicolas Cage's character to the island so he can be the sacrifice in the Wicker Man for
they change
fairy
it,
flower or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a very, like we said earlier, like Twilight Zone,
Yeah.
what's that, a Black Mirror
Yeah,
type
exactly.
of
Black
Yes,
Mirror is so
exactly.
good. Black Mirror is the new Twilight Zone. Anyway, we're not talking about good stuff. We're talking about bad stuff. So Rowan is not the sacrifice. Nicolas Cage is the
Yeah,
sacrifice.
it's just a trap, you know. But the scenes that comprise of this ending, I mean, we start out where he just completely decks Sister Beach.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Decks her.
He just acts
Knocks her
completely
the
different
fuck
than
out,
his,
you know.
his actual character. It's hilarious. It's
Right.
absurd.
And he takes the bear suit. Oh, but before he can take the bear suit, he beats the shit out of the other girl, you know. I mean,
Wow,
he
like
Bruce
Bruce
Lee
Lee.
kicks her into the wall.
Well, he's such like a non-violent character. There is literally no violence in this film
Yes.
until the last 7-8 minutes.
That's and that's what I was saying about levels, and even it comes to his physical things. It's like he's either 0 or he's 100.
Exactly.
And
Right.
there's no in between. There's no finesse.
I would argue that that's just Nicolas Cage, though.
right.
You
He
know,
goes
it's-
from someone
I think
that
that's
can
bad
barely,
direction.
He can barely
Nicolas
walk
Cage has
around.
won an Oscar.
Yes.
You don't win Oscars from going from 0 to
Right.
100.
Right. That's true.
You win Oscars from good direction or being really talented.
So, anyways,
I don't know.
the finale. He's trying to defend himself
Yeah,
from the.
they're all
the camp.
closing in on him, you
They
know.
close into him.
And the
They
gun.
trap him. And one of the recurring themes that we see is, of course, the bees,
The
which we
bees.
talked about, their
And
main
he's
income.
allergic.
And, of course, he has to be allergic to
Of
bees.
course.
So
Thank you, the
they,
plot.
They break his legs.
A lot of
Oh,
Green
geez.
Mile.
They,
scenes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Throw the bees all over him, and then finally sacrifice him, which just, I mean, obviously, we saw, everyone kind of sees it coming, and the twist works.
And this
How does
scene,
he survive from that bee thing?
the EpiPen.
Yeah.
she actually
they-
gives him the
yeah.
EpiPen.
But still, I mean,
The-
how many
the
bees are
epi
there?
bees.
Yeah,
I
that
don't
would.
know.
I think that many bee stings would kill a person even if they
Yeah.
weren't allergic. You
I
know?
think the amount of bee stings he sustained during that field or the scene
Yeah,
where he was
suspension
running
of
through the
dis-
field.
And that's the least of our
Suspension of
worries when it
disbelief,
comes
of
to
course.
this film.
That's true. I guess where it'd be like, oh, he would have died from the bees,
Yeah.
but
Right.
really he would have died from.
and
Anything
that's
else?
and that's really
Yes.
the most famous part of this movie. The not the bees. That's what makes this movie. You know, that's how people recognize
if you
it.
haven't seen Not the Bees, like
No,
Get
yeah.
out
Even
from
if
under
you
the
don't
rock
want to see the
that.
movie,
Yes.
just look at the
Please watch
clip.
yeah,
that.
not the bees. Yeah, it's
Very famous.
great scene. One of my favorites. You
in
know.
context, I find it very believable.
Oh yeah, he does a great job
Yeah.
reacting to this situation.
I mean, that's what I
That's
would
the
say.
thing,
I mean,
Nicolas
these
Cage does the best he
bitches,
can.
these bitches. This is murder.
Yeah, he says he calls them out.
Yeah, he
man.
really does.
From
And
the beginning, he takes no shit.
And
To be
character.
fair, they really destroy him.
Oh
Yeah.
No.
And my favorite part is he calls him out like, this isn't even gonna work.
Yeah,
Y'all are
exactly.
murdering me
Like,
for no
nothing.
reason.
And which is kind of a change from the 73 version.
Right.
Because I don't know, something about how it worked back then is that everything seemed a little bit more believable, it's so interesting, him just basically point blank.
Right.
He's so blunt about all of his dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
From,
Again,
this isn't
bad
going to work.
dialogue.
You people don't know what you're doing. You're crazy. You're not answering my questions. We've mentioned it. We'll beat a dead horse with that. He's just us reincarnated in the film,
Right. Mhm.
And just talk to these people and just taking, like I said, no shit from them.
Right. And it raises the question, was this a supernatural film? Because these people could just be crazy, you know, believing
Yeah.
in this goddess, and this sacrifice is not going to help them. Like Nicolas Cage was saying, it's just like we can believe this is, you know, in a real world scenario,
Right.
and these are just crazy people that believe that if they sacrifice this guy, it's going to help them, but it won't. Or is this film a supernatural film that actually it does happen that when he burns, they will have a good harvest, you know?
We just don't have enough information to
Exactly.
decide that, so we'd have to assume, mixing his PTSD with the absurdity of the people, that they're pretty much crazy. Mixing
Yeah.
those two together, we can kind of conclude that, yeah, this isn't supernatural. They are just absolutely
And
insane.
his PTSD is something interesting throughout the film because it doesn't look like he's on PT. It looks like he's on bath salts.
He
Right.
does. He does look
right.
high
We'd explain
more
the
so
masks.
than flashbacks and things
Yeah.
like that.
All right,
Oh,
so from a scale to 1 to The Room, what do you guys give this?
Oh man. I don't know. I think this had a lot more production value than The Room. Better acting.
For sure, yeah.
Which makes it like
There's a
less
higher,
of a
bigger
bad.
budget.
The Room's much more enjoyable to watch, though.
Yeah, I think
some-
the room has more stuff going on, so I
Right.
think that helps it. I mean, the stuff isn't necessarily very good what's going on,
Right.
but there's definitely more there than just like watching Nicolas Cage run across
Right.
a field or
There-
a dock.
There were decent parts. There were parts that were just terrible.
Right,
unlike
exactly.
The Room.
I think from what I'm going to give it from 1 to The Room, and I assume The Room is 10.
10, yeah.
From 1 to The Room, probably like a 6.5.
Yeah.
Because as much as we didn't enjoy it, it was still, there was something there that made it like just
I think that's the
slightly
production value.
mediocre.
Yeah, I honestly think it's the production value. I mean, they had a $40 million budget.
Yeah.
They didn't. It was a box office fail. It only made $38.8 million.
Oh yeah.
Turns
such
out it's a
fail.
cult film now because people love to watch it. They love to watch Cage's over-the-top
The
performance.
YouTube
but-
can take anything.
Right.
With my review over it, I'm gonna actually go the inverse.
Okay.
The larger the budget, the more I expect from your movie.
Right.
Okay.
So from on a scale of 1 to The Room, I'll give it a Cars 2, which translates to a 4 in my 4 or 5 in my case. I'll go
Yeah.
5. I'll give it. Nick Cage is punching these these bitches gets a 5.
Right.
I love Cars too. Anyways, we won't talk about that. I mean, I don't love it, but I love Cars. All right, Cade, what's your rating, bud?
I guess I'd give it like a 7. I am a
Jeez.
big Nicolas Cage fan.
A 7.
A 7.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm a huge Nicolas
Wow.
Cage fan, and I call myself a Cage. I like to study his works. Another great
Oh,
film,
yes.
if you want to see an over-the-top performance of him, is Vampire's Kiss.
Okay.
It's the I never misfiled anything.
Does
Not
he
once,
play a
not one
vampire?
time. Yes, he does. I
Oh.
believe so.
Face Off.
Awesome.
Everyone's got to see
Yeah.
Face Off too if you haven't seen it before.
Is Face Off a good movie? I've never seen it.
It's one of those kind of cultish movies that,
Right.
you could say half the people think it's just utter trash, but then
Okay.
there's that other group that are like, hey, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Drew, you haven't given your rating yet, right?
I'm gonna give it a 6.4.
Oh,
I like
okay.
to-
Wow, way
I
to
like to give
basically steal my
numbers
answer.
in decimals.
He priced.
I like to-
The
Okay.
price is right.
I'd like to change mine to 6.3. 6.5, actually.
Why 6.4, Drew?
Explain this well.
A 7 would mean it was real. It was getting real bad.
Mhm.
It just wasn't that bad for me. There were parts that I could enjoy. Maybe not now, but when I was young, perhaps.
Uh-huh.
What-
I didn't think it was a terrible movie.
I think if I had seen this when I was younger, I'd have been like, this is an
Yeah,
awesome
I think
movie.
so.
What would it have needed to do to get a 6.5 out of you?
To get that extra point one.
One more
Every
punch.
decimal is so important.
One more punch and one more you bitches.
maybe if they actually got Kathy Bates.
Right,
yeah.
Oh, that would move it up quite up. for
Actually,
me.
I was thinking about wonder what it would have been.
That would've been
Man,
pretty
man,
good.
if we had had actual Kathy Bates, this
But can
movie
we
would
also,
have won
can
an
we also,
Oscar.
Can we also talk about how there's a cameo by both Aaron Eckhart and James Franco
Franco.
in this movie?
Was that actually Aaron Eckhart?
That was actually Aaron
I think
Eckhart.
Johnny
They have
Depp.
him listed on here as truck stop patron.
Yeah, he was sitting at the.
That was a little weird. Just
Now,
kinda
this
random.
is, of course, 2006, so nobody knew who the fuck Aaron Eckhart was at that point.
Man, but
So-
isn't he great? Okay.
Yeah.
So what's next week?
Next week is spring break, so
Oh, that's
we're
right, spring break.
not recording anything because we're all going to go home
Drew,
and
you're
love our
fired.
family. But the week after that, so we had originally planned something over spring break, not realizing it was spring break. So that was going to be Super Baby Geniuses 2. But I think we're going to have to just push that one. So the
Push
week
that one till
after
It'll be a surprise.
that is,
Oh, do we have one?
I think it's The Happening.
I believe
Okay.
it is the
Oh,
happening.
there we go.
Yeah, we were
I'm
talking about
Finally
Shyamalan
gonna bring in
earlier.
Shyamalan
I
into it.
Shyamalan.
am pretty sure it's The Happening,
Sean
but
Lame.
don't quote me on that, even though I'm the host and I should know these things.
Let's
Hey,
stop.
that's another movie
Can we
with
just
the
stop
theme
talking
of
to
bees.
these people? I don't think
they're
they
like,
wanna hear us
please
anymore.
stop
Please
talking.
stop.
Please end the podcast. Okay. Thank you for listening to the Even Worse podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at TEW Podcast. The podcasts are posted every Friday on SoundCloud and YouTube. They are archived on YouTube with only the
Subscribe.
most recent episodes up on SoundCloud. Yes, subscribe, follow us,
Comment.
like us,
Please, it
share
increases
with us,
self-worth.
so that maybe it's not just my mom and Josh's mom that listen to this podcast.
Right. Thanks for watching.
For the Even Worse podcast, I'm your host, Matthew Rogers.
I'm Drew Myers.
I'm Cade McCarley.
Joshua Summers.
Thank you for watching, where the films are bad and the podcast is even worse.